Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagat Guru. So we are meeting after a long time, and last time, if you recollect, we were discussing verse number 25 from the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is a very important chapter because according to Sri Krishna, knowledge of Kshetra and Kshetrajna, that is, knowledge of Prakriti or nature, and that which is the support of the entire nature, that is Brahman or the unified consciousness that pervades this Prakriti, but at the same time is independent of Prakriti. So, as I said in the second chapter, I mentioned this last time, the goal of yoga as it is expounded by Patanjali, not the yoga as it is practiced, because that has nothing to do with the yoga of Patanjali, whose main goal of Patanjali's yoga is to, from by following different steps, 8 different stages, reach the goal which is to separate Purusha from Prakriti. Purusha, which is Kshetrajna. Here Sri Krishna uses the word Kshetrajna, one who is the knower of the field. Kshetra means field. Field means what we see around us, the whole universe, the cosmos, and everything that we see, that we can perceive, and of which we are a part. So, that which is behind this, or that which is conscious of this whole Prakriti, is known as Purusha, according to Sankhya. It was mentioned in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So, in the 13th chapter, Sri Krishna, if you see the verse number 1 to verse number 25, he explained in great detail what is Kshetra, that is, what is the field, the nature as we see it, as we perceive it, as the scientists study it. So, though it is mysterious, yet it can be perceived by our senses. And to the extent we can do a research and try to go deep into the secrets of the universe, they will reveal Prakriti or nature will reveal its secrets. But still, it appears to be mysterious because there are many secrets which are not yet revealed. That is why the idea of Purusha, which is also known as Brahman in Vedanta, and which is also known as the pure spirit in Christianity, the spirit which is not material. So about that, Bible is very clear. Jesus says you cannot have God and Mammon at the same time. What he meant that Kshetra and Kshetrajna cannot be attained at the same time. You can't have you can't have best of both the worlds. You have to slowly, if not immediately, slowly give up Mammon to reach God, or which is pure spirit. That is what he says. The kingdom of heaven is within you. It is kingdom of heaven is the kingdom of the spirit. That is exactly what Kshetra Kshetrajna Yoga tries to teach us, tries to tell us that this pure consciousness, which is known as the knower of the field, a knower cannot be the known, it can't be part of the known. So, everything from the body, from all the things around us, gross, subtle, even including the mind, is part of Prakriti. And the three gunas of Prakriti in different proportion give rise to this whole play of Prakriti. So, gaining knowledge of both in Krishna first says, because it is very practical, if we cannot ignore nature because we are living in nature. We can't just, till we transcend it, we need to know how to live in communion or live in peace and harmony according to the cosmic order, which is what is known as Prakriti. Prakriti is nothing but the cosmic order of the Vedic. In Vedas, it is known as Ritam. So, if you see the evening prayer which we normally sing in all our centers, which is one of the important aspects of uh, Swami Vivekananda's scheme, he gave a lot of importance to prayer and meditation. And he wanted to keep the rituals to the minimum. That is what Sri Krishna also will say now. So he says, knowledge of Prakriti, as far as it helps you to negotiate Prakriti for a higher purpose, which is to realize the Kshetrajna, is the goal of life. But for that, you need knowledge of both. Gaining a unified knowledge, you can't ignore Purusha, Prakriti, because we are living in Prakriti. We have to slowly make our way out and unite oneself with the Purusha, which is the goal of Patanjali's yoga. The goal of Patanjali's yoga is to understand through different stages. You start with asana, you start with yama, niyama, asana, pranayama. These are all the elementary steps which allow one's a human being to grow from grosser things to higher things, finally culminating in meditation. And meditation, finally, when it is deepened, it enables you to be free from the clutches of Prakriti. And that is what he calls as yoga. So, yoga has been defined as viyoga. Actually, it is separation. There's nothing to do with union. But at the same time, Sri Krishna, why does he say that you have to have a knowledge of both? Because unless you have a knowledge of Prakriti, that is Kshetra, that is why out of the 25 verses, more than 12 or 13 or more than that verses uh, uh, were dedicated to describing nature. If you know what nature is, then you know how it binds you, and then you know how you can be free from it. If you don't know its very nature, its properties, then how can you be free? So, gaining a knowledge of both Purusha and Prakriti is mukti. Mukti means freedom, total freedom. That is the goal of all the yogas, all Vedanta, everything. Buddhism will call it nirvana, but it's the same. And that is the essential part. How through focusing on the Kshetrajna or the Purusha or Brahman, we can, it's a kind of reversal. The whole thing is reversal. In when we start spiritual life, we start with rituals because we cannot get rid of material. We have considered since childhood that material is everything. So we want some concrete thing, we want some concrete object, and we dedicate, I mean, we worship it with those things. But as we go from grosser, as we proceed from yama, niyama, asana, and when we go to pranayama, that is when we first come to a subtle matter, which is breath, because that controls the whole body. So from breath, we are not supposed to stop there. We start with pratyahara, and then gaining a unified knowledge of the first four steps of yoga will teach you how to deal or how to slowly release yourself from the bondage of Prakriti. The next four steps will give you the knowledge of Kshetrajna. That is what Sri Krishna is going to say here in the Bhagavad Gita. So, verse 26 says, we just read it last time. I'll repeat what it says. यावत् संजायते किंचित सत्वं स्थावर जंगमम क्षेत्र क्षेत्रज्ञ संयोगात तद विद्धि भरतर्षभ. So whatever is born in the sense yavat kinchit, whatever is born out of sattva, that is being. Sattva means to exist. So when you say creation began, many things started to exist. Some exist for a temporary period of time. Some have a very short life. Dogs will live for 14 years, 15 years, 20 years. Human beings may live more. Plants and trees will live still more. They have a longer life. So they are all sattvas. They exist, but it's a relative existence. Sthavara Jangamam, moving and the unmoving. So he's not, Sri Krishna is very careful to consider even the unmoving means inanimate objects. Moving means, Jangama means that which is moving. That means animate objects, animate things. So we have animate things, we have plants which are also animate, which also move. Maybe it's a very subtle movement. It grows, it ages, and it dies. Every tree has a lifespan, maybe 1,000 years, but it still has a lifespan. So whatever moves or whatever does not move, so we This is the uniqueness of Vedanta, or Bhagavad Gita, which says, though it is unmoving, that means it appears to be unmoving, the forests, also the mountains, the stones, but still there are changes happening in them. They also break down, they also change. As time passes, everything in Kshetra or the field changes. So that we discussed in the first 25 verses. So he says, after knowing both the moving and the unmoving and knowing them to be temporary, then you know that the kshetrajna sayoga, somehow the kshetra, the observer, identifies himself with these unmoving things and it tries to think it is eternal. We think our life is eternal, we think our money is eternal, we think everything that we surround ourselves with, we think it is eternal. But no matter how, whatever we think, fact is something different. So he says a union of that eternal kshetrajna, that is the consciousness, and the kshetra, the field or prakriti, because of this mixture, we see the temporary universe as permanent. And we base all our hopes, our desires, according to Buddha, desires are nothing but they are temporary things, they just flow. So we just need to observe. They come, they we pass, come before our consciousness, and then they just pass away. So we go on observing. That is one way of meditation. But here in the Gita, it says, you know both, know what it is worth for, what it is worth, Kshetra, what is its relative worth, Kshetrajna, which you know its relative worth, and choose what you want in life. That is how his Bharatarshava means Bharata is a race. It is India was known as Bharata, which is the descendants of Bharata lived. Bharatarshava means the greatest among Indians. He is trying to praise Arjuna because he was a very strong person. And if Gita is taught to him, there is a chance that he will understand because he is already strong. So he says, oh, best of Bharatas, Bharatarshava, you have to know or have the knowledge of both Kshetra and Kshetrajna. So that is why Sri Krishna is now telling that though you know that both are inextricably mixed with each other, taking the permanent to be the temporary to be permanent, the kshetra to be kshetrajna, we deal with it. We give a sort of temporary permanency to everything that we deal with. We never think it is going to vanish away, including our own life. It is going to vanish after some time, knowing fully well. Yudhishthira, in fact, says that is the most surprising thing. We see people dying every day, and yet we think that we are relatively eternal. We are not going to die tomorrow or in the near future. So that is how Kshetra and Kshetrajna gets mixed. So Sri Ramakrishna gives a wonderful example. He gives a very, very common day-to-day from day-to-day life. He gives an example where he says the stuff that is known as milk gets divided when you churn it, when you uh, make it, convert it into curd, and then you churn it. You get butter and you get buttermilk. Two things come out of that. Butter is also part of that same milk or the same curd, and buttermilk is also there. So whatever is left after churning, after you separate the butter from the buttermilk, you know both were there in the same stuff, which is known as milk once upon a time. But since it can be churned and separated, similarly said, meditation is exactly churning the butter. That is why Sri Ramakrishna used to give this wonderful example. You will not find it in any scripture. It is his original observation because gives so many examples. He says, if you take milk and allow it to get converted into curd, then you should not be shaking that vessel. It has to be kept quiet. That's why he says when you need solitude, you just need, if you have an agitated mind always and always busy with the rituals and other activities, your mind becomes multifaceted and it cannot settle down. To settle down, I mean, for the curd to form, you need the milk in which you have put a little bit of either some sour substance to just make it curd. It has to settle down, and when the curd is formed, then you can churn it. Only after it becomes curd, if you churn it, you can separate. Similarly, Sri Ramakrishna says, before you even begin your spiritual life, you need solitude, because first you have to allow the curd to form, and then you can churn. Churning means meditation. When you meditate, this churning happens. And then you discriminate between that which is real, that which is eternal, and that which is temporary and which is not going to give you company for long. All are relative. Relative time periods, they will be with you. Some things will be there with you for a longer period. So Sri Krishna is saying that till you understand that you are the Kshetrajna, the knower of the Kshetra, till then this mixture is always there. But how do you distinguish between the two? Now it is completely mixed. You are always mistaking the Kshetra and the Kshetrajna, and you are not able to hold on to either of them. So the first thing is to withdraw yourself, go to a peaceful place, and allow the curd to settle. Then you start the churning process. Only when the curd is formed. If you do it prematurely, nothing will happen. So you cannot meditate when your mind is agitated. Obviously, you cannot meditate. That's why if you force yourself to meditate when your mind is agitated, it produces the opposite result. Just as when the milk is not formed and it has not converted itself into curd after a long time of stillness, it has to be kept still for a long time. Then you see that it has already, the curd has formed. Then you try to uh, take out the butter. Then you get the butter, and the buttermilk is left behind. That means you focus on the Atman or Kshetrajna, and the Kshetra slowly it will reach, I mean, it will lose its importance, because the essential thing is butter. Nobody, that's why buttermilk is always distributed free. In India, that is, there is a tradition. Once they take out the butter, they just, instead of throwing it, they just distribute it free, so that it doesn't have to be thrown away, because it's of no use. They have already churned and taken out all the butter. So also, when you lose your individuality in samadhi, that is the last stage of Patanjali's yoga, and you are one with Nirguna Brahman, then Prakriti will not harm you. Just as the buttermilk, once it is separated, then the Sri Ramakrishna says the butter can even float on that buttermilk. Nothing will happen because it's still floating. And the buttermilk, though it is of no use, or even if it is there, it is not going to spoil the butter because it has been separated. So the jiva, it can safely stay in this world once you realize that you are the Kshetrajna. You cognize the Ishvara, and you know this is Prakriti, but Prakriti is not powerful enough to harm you. You can still retain your identity as the butter, even if you are floating on buttermilk. So now, how does the Gyani, one who is practicing the path of Jnana, Vedanta, how does he see this Paramatma or the Kshetrajna? So he gives three verses are there, 27, 28, and 29. In these verses, he gives a hint because he cannot uh, give the entire description. What a man who really sees the butter, or one who has really extracted the butter, or who through meditation has reached the state of samadhi, how does he look upon the world? He still looks, he has to act as I said, he can float on buttermilk. But that buttermilk cannot dissolve that butter. That butter is already separated, so it is free. But at the same time, he has to float in that buttermilk. So what happens to such a person? Say he has realized Brahman, or he has realized that he is the Kshetrajna. The answer comes from Sri Krishna himself. He says, Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram vinashyatsu avinashyanta ya pashyati sa pashyati. So that person who sees the Supreme Lord, yeah, Samam, he sees different beings, but he doesn't have likes and dislikes. He's just neutral to all because samam sarveshu bhuteshu. Bhuteshu means all the beings, living and non-living, both. So he doesn't have any likes or dislikes. Seeing because he doesn't see the buttermilk, he sees only the butter. So he's not bothered where that buttermilk is. The content of the buttermilk or the content, whether it is in water, say you remove the butter and put it in some other water. Normally it is stored on the, in a bowl in water. Any liquid, because it is butter has a nature and it cannot be dissolved anymore in water. So it's safe to keep it in water to keep it cool. In India, they do that. So he sees he is still living in the world, but since he is samam sarveshu bhuteshu, so he sees the same Supreme Lord. He has realized by his sadhana, by solitude and by meditation, he has realized that the unperishable, that is why vinashatsu, avinashyantam. So he sees the imperishable or unperishable among the unperishing, among the perishable items. So he knows it is going to perish. Anything that he possesses or his own body, he knows it is going to perish sooner or later. But he is not perturbed because he has touched the soul. He has understood the unperishing reality within him. He has understood the kshetragna as compared to the kshetra. So the play of kshetra doesn't disturb him. That is why Patanjali, he says, the first thing you have to get rid of is raga and dvesha, that is strong likes and dislikes. Because right from childhood we have been told or we have been trained in a particular way. When you like certain things, you are pampered, and the parents say, oh, he likes this. And sometimes you say, I don't like this. And you make it, impress it deeper and deeper into his consciousness that I don't like these things, I like these things. So you run after things that you like and try to avoid. Your whole life is spent in avoiding things that you don't like, people that you don't like. So you don't have that kind of neutrality. For that neutrality, you have to go into solitude because there you allow the butter to be formed. And once the butter is formed, then it doesn't matter whether it stays in buttermilk or it is submerged or it is floating on water. It doesn't matter because it is totally insoluble now. It is totally separate. So the unperishing, one who sees the unperishing in the perishable, he really sees. So the screen of consciousness or the substratum is what is the unperishable. Just as in a movie, the change that takes place is seen on the screen, which is itself unchanging. If the screen keeps on changing, then the movie also, it is not possible to see the movie. So there is a background or the substratum of the screen on which the movie is seen. The movie will change and after a few hours it will be over, but the screen remains permanently. That is how the universe and the screen of consciousness, that is the kshetrajna, is always the witness to the changing world. So if you identify with the changing, you will be will be full of sorrow. And the Jnani who identifies always, at least tries to identify with the unchanging, who provides consciousness, he knows, he really knows. So Sri Ramakrishna again gives a wonderful example in the Gospel. He says the sun is neutral. It is not attached to good people or bad people. It sheds its light equally. Being at such a large distance, it sheds its light uh, equally. But if a cloud comes in between and does not allow the sun to shine on certain parts of the world, it is not the fault of the sun. The consciousness is there. But our ignorance, the cloud of our ignorance, because we have been too much immersed in Prakriti, that we have this cloud of Prakriti clouding our intellect. So, in Vedanta, it is known as Maya. So, whether you call it Prakriti or Maya, this Maya is something which hides the Brahman or the pure light of sun shining. And we say it is clouded. It's not clouded. The sun is not partial to us. The sun doesn't decide that I'll shine more on this part of the world, I'll not shine on the other part because of the cloud. It's once the cloud goes away, we see everything lighted, the same light being spread, the same intensity everywhere. So that is what he says. But what happens to that sadhaka? Now the question is, this is what he sees. He sees the unchanging in the midst of all this changing. He sees the Kshetrajna when he is dealing with Kshetra. Now, what happens in his own life? Now, this is what he sees. But what happens to such a person? And what is the benefit of seeing this? What is the benefit of it? Can we not do like others do and just go with the changing things? Always be immersed in Kshetra. What is the problem? If there is no change, if the person who sees this, who realizes this after a lot of sadhana and upasana, is it really worth it? Is it really worth meditating, spending so much of time in meditation? When you can, if because when people things go right in their life, they think the world is a beautiful place. But unfortunately, things are always do not go as we like. We like certain things to happen, but by its very nature, Prakriti is made of sattva, rajas, and tamas. So Sri Krishna has clearly told us that Kshetra being changeable, being of a temporary nature, it is always going to give us happiness and misery. Mixed happiness, sometimes more misery, sometimes less misery, sometimes more happiness, sometimes less happiness. So, in the midst of all this, what happens? Why should he undertake the exercise? Not to identify with the Kshetra, because Sri Krishna has given a very balanced view. He said, I'll tell you what Kshetrajna is, that is the Brahman, the unchangeable. I'll also tell you what the changeable is. Now, depending on your choice, what you choose to do is telling Arjuna. Now you choose what you want, how much of Kshetrajna you want to know, and how much of Kshetra you want to know. If you are happy with Kshetra, fight the battle of life. That is what he was ready for. He said, I didn't tell you to stop fighting. But if you fight, you will have to bear the consequences. Because Kshetra runs according to certain rules. The cosmic laws, rhythm, the universal laws, they don't change. They will always follow certain rules. So if you are happy with that, you follow that. So he anticipates that Arjuna will ask this question, that what is the use of doing all this? Because he is not convinced. He is convinced that there should be a war. And that is why, only because he was afraid, or maybe he became emotionally attached to his cousins, he decided not to fight. Not that he wanted to realize the Kshetrajna. Otherwise, he would have not even asked Krishna. He would have not come for the battle. He would have retreated into a forest and did yoga and real yoga and realized the goal of his life. Because he wanted to get involved in Kshetra, because he was interested in dharma, in justice, he decided to fight and he prepared himself for the fight. So Sri Krishna is not telling him you give up, but he's just telling the relative importance of Kshetra. This is temporary, but if you think temporary is for the moment, it is important to you, you have to fight, then you fight. There's nothing. But what happens if one who thinks and holds on to the permanent? He has to show the other side. He is very neutral. Sri Krishna is not even forcing him not. In fact, he has asked him to fight. He says, because your nature is to fight, even if you say, I'll go and meditate, you can't meditate. So you better fight, finish the fight, gain some experience of what happens when you fight. Maybe a little bit of suffering when he lost his children, then his own children, all the Pandavas' children were killed in the war. So after that, maybe if sense dawns upon you, I am telling you the whole teaching of Bhagavad Gita in 18 chapters he explained. And at the end, if you see in the 18th chapter, he says, I have told you everything. Now you do what you like. If you feel right now you are prepared to fight, so you have to fight. There is no other way. But after the battle is over, maybe in retrospect, you will really feel, was this battle really worth fighting for? After having lost so many, not only his own children, he lost so many of his relatives, including his guru, whom he had to kill, Dronacharya. So a lot of people, his grandfather, his great grandfather, who Bhishma, who was so dear to him. So the consequences of war were known to him, and he has prepared to fight the war. And now he cannot. He wants to withdraw out of maybe for some sentiment or emotion. And Sri Krishna says, even if you withdraw, don't think you will be able to meditate. You go into the jungle. Whatever I said is fine, but for that, you have to prepare yourself. Right now, your duty is to fight. He has told this, but he is telling this because he wants to also to be very neutral. Though he has asked him to fight, he will tell him what will happen if the sadhaka who realizes the kshetrajna develops that to such an extent that he will be in a position to appreciate the result of a sadhaka is telling him just for his information, not that he knows for certain that Arjuna is not going to follow this. So he says samam pashyani sarvatra sama vasthita mishwaram na hinasti atmanam tata yati param gatim, because he, see, this is very important. The meaning of this is samam pashyan hi sarvatra. He has this person, I mean, who's focusing on the kshetrajna, because he is so much focused in that, he, not that he does not see difference. He sees difference. He sees good, he sees evil, he says, he comes across nice people, he comes across people, evil people. But he's, because his focus is not on the relative existence, is not immersed in kshetra, from a vantage point, he can separate himself and see this as a whole drama, see the whole universe as a drama. When you see a film, you don't get involved unless you are emotionally involved in the uh, good characters or the bad characters, whichever you choose. You are not, you look at it or enjoy it neutrally, knowing that somebody has to become a hero, somebody will become a villain, and they'll fight, and finally, whatever the movie maker has decided, that will be the result. And you are not least bothered because you are the same person. Even before the movie and after the movie, you are just witnessing this whole drama. So also he says, this person, what is the benefit of realizing the kshetra? Because he sees the Lord, that is the consciousness, seated same everywhere, is there, same is everywhere. Such a person destroys not the self by the self. Here it means he does not destroy the destroy the lower self by the higher self. Otherwise, in the second chapter, he says one who does not take up to the study of separating the spirit and the non-spirit, that is matter, he will feel that he is killed, he will be killed, or he will die. So he is not destroying, at least. He is one with that supreme self, which is unchangeless. So it doesn't matter. As Jesus, when he was crucified, everybody was surprised. First of all, he could have saved himself if he had told a few lies. He could have uh, he could have saved himself, because the only question they asked him was, "Are you the emperor of the Jews?" And he said, "Yes, I am the emperor." But he meant, actually what he meant and what his conviction was, it is the spiritual empire he was speaking of. He had nothing to do with the Roman Empire or money or all those things. And he has told these sentences, but people could not believe or could not even imagine that somebody can be a leader or the emperor of the spirit, will have nothing to do with material things, not even his own body. So when they crucified the body, he was just watching it as he was watching a drama, and that is why he was, in fact, smiling and telling the people who crucified him, he said, "Oh Lord, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing," because they are thinking that by killing the temporary self or the lower self, they are thinking that they are destroying the lower self. But a Gyani or a man of knowledge, he does not destroy the self. For him, whatever is destroyed is the non self. So he's not bothered whether it is his body or anybody's body which is being killed. So he says they are out of ignorance that think that they are killing me, but I have realized that I am the Kshetrajna, I am the spirit, because my kingdom of heaven, which I am the king, is something different which these Roman emperors had no idea of. So when he said he was a king, they said, how can you claim when the king is still alive? Though they thought he's becoming popular and maybe he has an ambition to become the king of the Roman or whichever empire the king was. He felt threatened, and that is why he ordered his people to kill this innocent man. But he was not disturbed because he thought it was ignorance, for they know not what they are doing. That means they are ignorant and they consider this physical body, which is anyway going to die one day. So they can't kill my spirit, and that spirit is going to live. And that is how he saw the self. He did not destroy his lower self by the higher self. Therefore, he reaches the supreme goal. That means uh, this removal of ignorance. The worst of all the sins that a human being can commit is that the more we think that we are the body and not the Atman, we get involved in Kshetra and not the Kshetrajna. So that is the biggest evil according to Sri Krishna. So he says by raising the self or by not destroying the lower self by the higher self, by not resorting to ignorance, the knower of Brahman goes beyond, yeah, I mean, he reaches the supreme goal. Now, what is that supreme goal? So, uh, Sri Ramakrishna again gives, see, all these one difficult things, Sanskrit verses, Sri Ramakrishna is explained in small sentences, giving day to day examples. So, he says, just as the nest is dismantled when the bird flies away in the sky, similarly, when the body consciousness is negated by constant meditation on the Supreme Self or the Kshetrajna, and the attachment to the world is annihilated. You don't need a nest when you are no longer going to stay there. When the bird is free, when it is taken flight, it doesn't matter if you keep the nest or you destroy it. So the Jivatma, when the Jivatma, they are comparing the Jivatma, when it flies away into the sky of the Paramatma, that is the Kshetrajna, the consciousness, only to be merged in him, he doesn't need a nest. He needs a nest when he comes back to the cage of his body. So the body consciousness. Now what happens? What happens to his karma? You see, we are in Hinduism, in Buddhism, in all the Eastern philosophies, the law of karma or the cause and effect, the science, which science says is the ultimate law. There cannot be an effect without a cause. So science, the whole structure of science, the truth of science, whether it is material science, physical science, psychological science, there is no effect possible without a cause. As the cause, so the effect. So once the cause is there, then it requires another cause which can change the cause. That is why Holy Mother is to say, through japa, you can lessen the evil that is going to come to us. Instead of getting a sword wound, maybe if you are lucky, you'll get a pin prick. What she meant was, there is a cause in the past where you deserved a sword wound of the sword. According to karma, you deserved that. But somehow, because there is another cause which you have done. You have repeated the holy name. So one of the things it can do is it can lessen its effect. Maybe if you would have got a sword wound, you will just somehow escape with a small pin prick. But some karma has to come. So it will come. So what happens to the karma of that Brahmagani? Suppose he reaches that Brahmagana, as Krishna says in verse 29 and 30, he will show, because he cannot himself nullify the karma theory. He has already spoken about karma yoga in his third and fourth chapter. So in verse 29, because that is a very logical question, that what will happen to all the karma of that person who has realized the self? If he merges, then will he not have to suffer the effects of his past karma? So then he says, This is a very important verse. This is the central theme of this chapter. There are two verses, 29 and 30. We try to finish both. He says the karma which you are speaking of is not valid in the field of kshetrajna. It is only in the kshetra. So karma pertains only to Prakriti. So that is why he is telling Arjuna that see, you are made of Prakriti. You are identified with Prakriti, so you have certain qualities. You have more rajas, that is why you have become a Kshatriya. Somebody else who is has more sattva, maybe he can go and meditate, but you are born to fight. So your Prakriti will make you fight. It was said in the second chapter and the third chapter also. So Krishna, Arjuna is confused. He is saying, you tell me these highest things. So what should I do? And on the other side, first you said you have to fight, don't run away, otherwise people will call you a coward. And now you are saying you have to go beyond Prakriti. So why don't you give me a chance? Why can't I just leave the field, Kshetra, and go to the Kshetrajna and go? But he says it is not possible to suddenly give away. From tamas, you have to come to rajas, which Arjuna has already reached. From rajas, you graduate to sattva, and when the sattva quality of Prakriti is full, I mean, it is, you are full of sattva, then you can slowly graduate to meditation. That is what he says. So the karma you are speaking of, it pertains to sattva, rajas, and tamas. According to your karma, Prakriti eva cha karmani kriyamanani sarvasha ya pashyati tatha atmanam akartaram sa pashyati. Means he verily sees. He means the person who has realized this. He has separated. He still does karma because he still has the body. He has still got some karma remaining. It is known as prarabdha. The example that is given is a chariot. He says, suppose the chariot is moving very fast. That is because of karma. It is moving very fast. Because some cause was there, either the horse was pulling, or maybe it was just going by gravity, it was just going down. Whatever it may be, whatever be the cause, there was some cause which was making the chariot to go very fast. Suddenly it bumps against a big stone and the chariot breaks into pieces. That is the example which Shankaracharya and others give. What happens to the karma? After your karma is gone, if you have realized the Atman and Prakriti has no longer any influence on you, then why do you continue to work? He says such a person, I mean Shankaracharya says, or the people who comment on this say that just as after the chariot is broken, it will no longer go down because it is the wheels that made it go down along the slope, or maybe the horses pulled it. But if the chariot is broken, he says still the momentum of the motion of that chariot will take it forward till it comes to a halt. Because the broken pieces can't go indefinitely. But because it has broken suddenly or maybe slowly, it has come out, the wheels have come out, then the wheel will go. It will roll for some time, maybe this side, that side, but somehow it will, till it comes to a halt, it will move. So it doesn't mean that it is moving because of karma. It is moving because of the prarabdha karma. They call this that which has already set in motion. That the chariot is already set in motion. So stopping it or breaking it, which is like realization, will make him do the work. But all his actions, which he does, will not impact him or create more karma because he is just a witness now. He sees that all actions are done by Prakriti, not by me. He has managed to separate. So he acts in a very neutral way. He just observes. So in Buddhism, they call it vipassana. They just train the person to just observe. Don't react to anything, just go on seeing, observing things. You'll see some good people, you'll see some bad people, you'll see some pleasant things, you'll see, but don't be impacted. If the moment you react to that, the reaction will produce karma. And then you have to further karma, and then it becomes a very complicated thing. So what Buddhism does, or the vipassana and all these types of meditation, you are just asked to observe. Observe your breath, observe your whatever happens in your body, whatever happens outside of you. You just be neutral and identify yourself with the Kshetrajna or the pure consciousness, which they call awareness. They call prajna or awareness. So what happens is he just sees, they just see or observe. But of course, Bhakti says this is a very slow method to be a Sakshi and watch everything. Then you have to patiently wait till you watch, see all the karmas coming up, going down, coming up, going down, the thoughts coming up, going down. Then it will become less. It will take a lot of time. So Patanjali suggests, and the Bhakti school of Vedanta suggests, instead of waiting till everything quietens, which is a long waiting game you have to play when you practice this mindfulness or awareness meditation. He said there is another way, which is having counter thoughts. You know which are the thoughts that are disturbing you. So just produce the counter thought, negate it as quickly as possible, then the duration will be lessened. That is what he is saying. So the person who, this is of course, this is something which is uh, very close to the Buddhist meditation of mindfulness. So, to begin with, this witness attitude is good, but he will tell in Bhakti Yoga the other chapters. You'll see the other chapters also where he is giving a, another advice, asking him if you want this process to be a little faster, then you do japa, you do prayer, you try to counter. Don't allow the thoughts to just, otherwise there will be cause and effect. So you force the thoughts by forcing some opposite thought and then try to neutralize it. So Prakriti or Shakti that you see around you and even which is running our own minds, our own body, everything is running by Shakti. It is full of activities, but it belongs to Prakriti. And the witness attitude or the consciousness belongs to Purusha. So if the Jnani, if he meditates continuously on the Purusha, then the changes in Prakriti, first it will affect him because it is got mixed up. But as he separates, he just becomes the witness and he becomes less and less impatient, less and less reactive in his life. So that is one sign he says. He is, appears to be actionless. He is not actionless, he is doing all the actions. But with the conviction that the actions that I am doing is just a prarabdha just going on, he is full of activities. See, for example, Krishna himself, throughout his life, he was so active. One could hardly see in his life that he is meditating or going away. Of course, during his younger days, he did sadhana. When he was in Sandipani, when he was in some many places, you'll still find, like Sri Ramakrishna, he also used to go into solitude. But most of the time, he was in the midst of action, though himself was not engaged. See, he was neither, he had clearly said, I am neither going to fight the war, not take part in this battle. But he was in the midst of battle, like the buttermilk, the butter which was floating in buttermilk. He was in the middle. In fact, he was the central figure in the whole war. But you see, he never took up any weapon, nor does he take any sides. He was equal. When the Kauravas died and when they started crying, he would console them. When Arjuna lost his children, all the children, Arjuna and other Pandavas, he went to console them. He was not affected. The Jnani is not affected because though he is full of activities, he knows these activities are done by Prakriti alone. The Purusha is unperturbed. So he says, I adore him as Brahman, who is all awareness, unaffected by activities such as creation, preservation, and destruction. So, if you accept creation, you want to be creative, you want creation, then you have to accept the fact that no matter how much you try to preserve it, one day it will be destroyed. You can't expect that which is created to last. There is no such thing as eternal creation. Creation is always in cycles. That is a great theory of Sankhya, of which this Kshetrajna Yoga is a part. So it says that whatever is created, it is subject to modification, it is subject to preservation, but one day it has to die. So nothing in Prakriti is permanent. If that knowledge is there, all these activities of creation, preservation, and destruction, then one just does not get involved in this. So that is why Arjuna was told in the beginning that whether you fight this war or run away from the battle, you are going to die. Maybe if you go to the jungle and maybe a tiger may kill you, or you'll die of some other disease or some insect bite or anything, snake bite. And if you die in the battle, at least people will not call you a coward that you have left when you were supposed to fight. You have been prepared to fight. So if since it is temporary, then why do you bother? But if you remember me and fight, remember me means remember the Supreme Purusha, then it will not impact you. The karma will not be added unto you. Whatever little karma is there because of fighting for dharma, whatever negative karma you might have done, you can counteract it by doing positive karma. And further, you will gain proximity to the actionless Brahman in a very gradual way without just running away from the battle. Now, in verse 30, which is the next verse, he clearly shows the relationship between Kshetra and Kshatragna. Because he wanted, first he described what Kshetra is, what are the different categories of Kshetra, the variety that we say in nature, and what Kshetragna is, which is a witness of all this. One is eternal, other is temporary. So after saying that, he says that knowing both is good, but you also have to know the relationship between the two. So Sri Ramakrishna used to say, you have to know, I mean, referring to him, who you are. You means the devotee who used to come to Ramakrishna. Then you should know who I am. And then you have to know the relationship between us. These are the three things you have to know. What he meant was, you have to know what Kshetragna is. That is one who has realized oneself as the Purusha or Brahman or Kshetragna. Has reached Nirvana or Mukti. For such a person, that is known as Purusha or the Paramatma. And then the Jivatma, he knows he is bound because he is having so much of attachment to this Prakriti. He is either full of rajas, he is a Kshatriya, he is full of knowledge, he doesn't like to. But even if he is meditating, he is still bound because he has his whole world in the mind. He may not be active as a Kshatriya, his mind may not be creative, but at the same time, it is still, there are many steps a sattvic person has to do to transcend and become one with the Purusha. So he will also act. So whatever role we play, play in the field that is Kshetra, uh, we have a relationship. Always we have a relationship with our consciousness. For some people it is more, they are happy. Some people it is less, so they suffer. There are ups and downs. They think it is they who are having ups and downs. Whereas a person who identifies with the kshetra is happy because he says, oh, it is happening. It's like a drama. He is like a person who does not get involved in the movie. He just watches it as a neutral person, just enjoying it as a movie, not as a reality. But if you take the movie seriously and get identified with certain characters, then you weep with the person who is suffering, and then you enjoy when he's enjoying, and you laugh when he's laughing, and then you become part of that movie, then you suffer. But a witness, he sees it just as it is unfolding on the screen, a drama of Prakriti on the screen of Purusha. But still, how is the screen related to the film that is being projected on that? Yada bhuta pritag bhavam ekastham anupashyati tata eva cha vistaram brahma sampadyate tada. So now he says, what is the relationship? Can we not just focus on the Purusha? Why should we bother? He said, no, you can't. You have to establish a relationship. When Thakur said, first you know who I am, you get a comparatively good idea of who I am and what I have done, what is the state to which he reached. Sri Ramakrishna said. Then you try to find out who you are, try to understand who are you, what is your identity, how much of inferiority complex you have, how much of superiority complex you have, what is your role in this Prakriti. The role is, of course, taken by oneself. This role is not assigned to us. By our karma, we take up certain roles, we make choices. Choice making is not so easy. We make certain choices in life based on our gunas. That is what he says. Our Prakriti makes us do certain things. So you have to slowly divest yourself of this, uh, the choice that you have made. You can't just give up that choice. Once you have made it, you have to be careful. That is why they say the buddhi is necessary. The first result and benefit you get after meditation, one gets is the buddhi becomes sharp, and from that day or progressively, one makes the right choices every time. One doesn't make a choice and then repent, or one does not keeps on postponing and not making a choice. So at some stage we have to make a choice, and it should be the right choice always. So how to make the right choice? The right choice can be made when the more the buddhi is awakened. So he says yada bhuta pritak, when different, the whole variety of beings, different means different levels of beings. Some beings are making the right choices all the time. Some are always making mistakes and then suffering. They're just impulsive. They just take a decision and then suffer. So the whole variety of beings, when he says prutak bhuta prutak bhavam, the whole variety of beings, ekastham, you see resting it on the one. You see a restless man, a quiet man, and a middle, somebody who is in the middle, who is neither restless, and then you don't get perturbed because they are all resting on the same Purusha. Because you have seen that it is the Purusha which is giving reality to all these people. And all are temporary. Even the restlessness of the restless person is temporary. The meditative nature of the sattvic person is also necessary. It's just now the sattva is more. After some time, the tamas may increase, then he may become a dull person. Or rajas may increase, he may become an active person. So the same person, because of the play of Prakriti, assumes different shapes or different varieties. He becomes a active person at some time, he just retreats and becomes a quiet person. Sometimes he becomes a dull person. So depending on the gunas, the Jnani, for the Jnani, he does not pass any judgments on anyone. That is why Jesus said very clearly, do not judge others so that ye be not judged. And by the same judgment you judge others, you will be judged in heaven. He spoke of heaven, but here we speak of the same higher reality, which is Kshetrajna. So you should not judge, because the moment you start judging, you think what your judgment or your knowledge of certain things is the ultimate knowledge, which is not. He says you can only see from the highest standpoint you can judge. Only God can judge. So that is why he says if you judge a person or judge people, judge things, judge events, the same judgment will be applied to you. And then you can't tell God that I have made mistake in judgment. You judge me, be a little compassionate. He says you have judged people in this way, and then you expect me to change the standard, change the laws. The same laws will apply to you. So judge ye not, so that ye be not judged. That is wonderful, which reflects what is said in this verse. So he doesn't see the whole variety of beings without as resting in one, and not being judgmental or passing any judgments on that. And it is an evolution from that one alone. From God has come the evil person, from God has come the better, good person. He is evil because he cannot help. He has to behave because of his gunas. The other person is behaving in a good way. Though he wants to become evil, he cannot do it because he is born with a sattvic nature. So even if he wants, he cannot become a robber. Because he is not tamasic. His gunas do not permit him. So just as the robber robs by impulse, so also the other person, because of his sattva, he cannot do the same thing. So whether one is doing the variety that we see, one should not be surprised. That is why when Swami Vivekananda once was very much upset that his father is giving away money to some without finding out what they are doing. And Swami Vivekananda found out that he is giving money to some people who will go and drink. They were drunkards. Somehow they came for help, and his heart was so liberal that he used to give whatever he had. Somebody was asking, he would not even question. But Vivekananda, after knowing this, when he was very young, he asked his father, "Why are you not discriminating and giving?" That's when he tells his son that you see, there is so much suffering in this world. I cannot judge. I don't know why God has created the drunkard in that way and somebody else in some other way. So now that he is helpless, he's asking, I don't even bother what he will do with the money. He wants money, I'll just, if I can, I'll give him. So he had that natural ability not to judge. So from that point of view, we see, I mean, that is what happens in the 30th verse. He sees Ekastham resting in the one. The one screen is responsible for all the scenes of the movie, whether it is good or bad. And then he sees that from one, that screen alone is responsible. So you can't blame the person. I mean, at least not a spiritual person should not blame. And he becomes that, and he becomes himself Brahman. So Sri Ramakrishna gives example. We will conclude. Uh, if there are some questions, you can just keep it ready. When Sri Ramakrishna gives an example, he says there is an ocean, there are waves, there are ripples, there is a tide, sometimes a very big tide, and then everything belongs to the sea. It's not that the tide has it has a temporary existence when it comes and strikes the coast. It appears the tide has its own individuality. But once it hits, then it becomes one with the sea. So they have no existence independent, which is independent of the sea. Though they may feel, the wave may think, I'm going to gobble up everyone. But even that tide finds that it is powerless. After some time, he is leveled. The water is leveled and then it can do anything. So the Maya Shakti, Sri Ramakrishna says, which is inherent in Brahman, makes this whole play possible. And all the beings, they are resting on Brahman. Neither this jivas who are part of the Prakriti, or the Shakti, who is the root, the power, Maya, they are not separate from Brahman, which Sri Ramakrishna explained by giving the example of a snake. A snake which is steady or a snake which is moving is the same snake in different stages. The snake either appears to be moving, then it is Shakti. When it is not moving, it is immovable, or it does not move, it is steady. Then it is can be compared to Brahman. So Sri Ramakrishna says the static Brahman and the kinetic Shakti. That is the difference between Sankhya and Sri Ramakrishna has tried to unite this philosophy. In fact, Krishna has attempted here. That is why he is showing both the aspects and saying why the relationship between the two should be understood, because they are not separate. Brahman cannot exist apart from Shakti, Shakti cannot exist apart from Brahman. So they are interdependent, they are different aspects of the same reality. So Satchidananda Brahman is omnipotent, omniscient, and also she can be called the all blissful mother. So whether you worship Kali as a god with form or god without form, it is like Sri Krishna said, the same water when it freezes, or maybe near the ocean, in the ocean, some icebergs are there. They are with form, but when they melt, when knowledge comes, they melt and become water. But there are places where the water does not melt at all. It's near the poles. Near the poles, they eternally existent in the form of ice. So he says some people who believe in a personal God, they don't like the idea of impersonal God. They say, no, our God is the God which is of the shape of an iceberg, and since it is eternally ice, it never converts into water. Why can we not worship? Because it is the same water that is being worshipped. So Brahman and Shakti are the same. Now, the question is, now we'll not start this because there are four verses, 31 to 34. We'll leave it for the next class. The next question which Krishna is anticipating that Arjuna may ask him He says these changes in Prakriti, do they affect Brahman? So, because once there is a relationship, then you think, because in relationship both are affected. The problem is from a worldly point of view, uh, they say you cannot clap with one hand. You need two hands. So if you hit one hand, the other hand will be affected. So do the activities of Prakriti that are reflected on Brahman or are witnessed by Brahman, do they affect Brahman? Does his nature change or does the screen change because of the movie? So that three verses he shows that though they are connected, Brahman is always independent. The Kshetrajna is always independent. It always remains eternally separate. That is why in Advaita, Shankaracharya uh, gave less importance to Maya, though Sri Ramakrishna gave very much a lot of importance to Shakti, because he knew that most of the people are in the realm of Shakti. They are attached to their money, they are attached to their property, they are attached to their bodies, and who can say that they are not attached? Everybody is attached. So he knew that it is for most of the people, majority. That is why Advaita appears to many people, and because it is good as a philosophy, just to enjoy that, oh, uh, we are the supreme Brahman, everything else is Maya. It's very easy to say, but Sri Ramakrishna believed otherwise. He said, since we are the body, we need Shakti, we need the help of Prakriti herself, who has bound us and who is confusing us, to release us from this. So it is better you pray to the Divine Mother, who has the capacity to lead you beyond Maya. If you just say Maya, it is not enough. We need the grace of Shakti, because we are immersed from it is like somebody who is in the waves, or who is in a very restless ocean, or maybe a pool or a lake. When the water is restless, you have to make use of some board which is again moving up and down. You want some steadiness in the midst of that water. When the water is steady, you can swim and come out. But when you are in a very difficult situation where there are waves from all sides, you are not able to swim, then you wish that there is a body or there is a boat where you can jump in, and maybe the boat will jump up and down, but at least you will not drown. And when the water is calm, you can hope to go to the shore. So similarly, Sri Krishna uh, here is trying to say that though they are connected to each other, and though we need to know the Prakriti, but that is not the goal. The goal is Purusha, though they are related. And why they are not affecting each other is because if the witness or the eternal witness is something by definition, it is of the nature of Satchidananda, which is the goal of life. So if you mix, this is the means. Maya is the means, or Prakriti is the means. So you take the help of Prakriti. He gave the wonderful example of a thorn. He says, when a thorn is stuck in your foot, you can't remove it. Suppose it has gone deep. You need another thorn to remove it. So you use Prakriti to remove the effect of Prakriti on you and unite with the Purusha. So are there any questions? Yeah.
There's one question.
Yeah.
It says, can we say that Sri Krishna says all the problems arise due to association with the body and they cease when we associate with Atman? If yes, then how can we constantly remember that I am Atman, not the body? What are
Yeah.
the techniques to constantly remember this fact?
Yeah. So this is a good question somebody has asked. Sri Krishna says all our problems are, we just read a few verses before, is because of the association with the body. It's not that, it's maybe one third of the problems are body related. There are other problems. See, he's saying when he says body, you have to remember he's talking of the subtle body also, which is the mind. So according to Sankhya, Prakriti is not just the solid Prakriti, the body, the physical body with prana and other things. It is also the mind, because the mind and body are not different. They are, mind is a little more subtle, but it impacts the body and the body also impacts the mind. So when he says our attachment to the body, he also means the mind. So that is the first part. So just by not thinking, and first of all, you need the mind to think that you are not the body. It is to give, or to give, even to give less importance to the body. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when Naren used to come, he used to appreciate because all other people would be nicely conscious of their dress. Naren almost felt like a vagabond when he came. If you see, Sri Ramakrishna himself says he was not particular about his dress. Not that he was careless, he was so absorbed in higher thoughts that he did not think it is worth wasting time to just dress himself like the Babus used to do. Calcutta was full of Western influence of Western manners, and if you dress in a particular way, they laugh. So whoever came, especially those who had the benefit of modern education, as Narendra had, they would be following certain traditions. So Sri Ramakrishna says he has no concern, and it was real. It's not that he is acting as if he is no. There are some people who are lazy and then come in a very dirty dress. That is not what he meant. He was so absorbed in knowing the higher reality or God that he gave less importance, or he was didn't have time to comb his hair and all. You see in the gospel it is there. So he says that boy who comes, he is so careless of his body. Not careless, not conscious of his body. So he was so much in his, he identifies so much with his mind. He was always thinking, what is the solution to this? The Brahmo people are saying this, the Christians are saying this, Islam says this. I want to know whether God really exists or is it just a mental imagination. So he was so much absorbed in thought that he could give less importance. So that way you're giving, I mean that's the only way perhaps giving less importance to the body and also to your mind, because which is part of the body. And if we just keep on bothering whether what will I do, my mind is full of thoughts, you just have to ignore it. So the question which was asked was, is it possible to think? Definitely. So what Sri Ramakrishna says, it is possible because when you go to the east, west is left behind. Similarly, when you spend most of the time in thinking of the spirit, the less you will think of the body, the less you will think of others' bodies, less you will think of uh, the world around you. It is very natural that one will become spiritual. So that is, it's, but thinking of the Atman all the time, as the question was asked, whether we can focus on the Atman, that is difficult, because even if you don't remind yourself, but the body will remind you when there is pain, when there is some mental ailment, some kind of disease, physical or mental. You are reminded that you have a mind. When the mind is happy, that is why they say that when everything is happy, when you have very good health, then you think less of the body. You think of the body when the body reminds you that I am also there. The tooth is hurting. Then the tooth says, you have been neglecting me all the time. Now I will give you some pain. And you will now can't ignore me. I am there. So it's only when the prana and the body and all those things, they have their own way of reminding you that they also are there. So also the mind. So what you do when you meditate, you don't allow that. Then you think of a sick mind. When you think of a sick mind, when you think of an anxious mind, then you realize I have a mind. I have a mind which is now troubling me. It is giving rise to so many emotions. But if a meditative mind is not actually thinking about the mind, it is thinking of something higher. It is replacing. So thinking of Atman, Atman is just a word. The best thing is to think of God as the manifestation of that Brahman or Atman. That is a much easier way because we can start with a form. Though form is like a door, through the door you can go out into the wide open, uh, but you have to use a door. You can't just go through the wall. So that is why they say accept some form and try to superimpose the eternal quality of Purusha. And the more you think of that form, though it is a form right now, that form leads you to the formless. So that is one way. And what is the second part of the question? That's all. So thinking of the Atman always is a good method, but our idea of Atman is very flimsy. We by Atman, what do you understand? We don't understand anything. Atman is something which you have to experience as a process. Atman can be only defined negatively by saying not this, not this. So that is why the Jnani's renunciation is most difficult. Whenever some things come, when sorrow comes, you say, not the sorrow. I am not the sorrow. I am peaceful. I am the Atman. So again and again you have to negate. So that is why they call this is a negative way, neti neti, na iti, not this. So but then you have to give up the positive things also, which is very difficult. We don't want to give up the positive things. We only when negative things come, we think of God. That is, we think of the Atman. That will not do because things will come in a very pleasant way. Then you can't say this is neti. We can't say this is not true because if you want it to be true and you feel that this is not causing a problem to me. So that is why it is uh, difficult. No doubt it is difficult, but belief in a personal God whom you somehow manage to develop a liking for, then it is easy because all your likes you can uh, transfer to that eternal reality, which will lead you to the eternal Atman or Brahman. Okay. Any more questions? Yeah. Shall we conclude? Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna